Hello, myself Shubhangi Sikaria, and today I'll be presenting on grandeur causality analysis for functional time series data. I have done this work jointly with Dr. Rituparna Sen. So a functional data is observed when we are trying to analyze a data from a smooth function, or we are trying to model a data by a smooth function. So basically it is an extension of a multivariate data analysis. So in multivariate data analysis, we have a vector, and here we are just characterizing that individual with the help of functions. So when we have a time ordered sequence of random function, we say we have a functional time series. And there is a lot of application of functional data analysis in different fields, like in healthcare, we have electrocardiograms, then in climatic variation, we have a daily graph of temperature or rain. And then in financial time series, we have yield curves that we try to observe at different maturities every day. So we'll be modeling functional data with the help of multivariate functional autoregressive models. So let's say we have a k-variate functional time series yt. Then my multivariate functional autoregressive model is just an extension of var1. So basically we have a yt minus mu, where yt is my function, then or a set of functions. Then it is depending upon yt minus 1, which is just observed from the previous step. So my mu is the mean of yt, then epsilon t is basically the innovation function or innovation errors, and psi is basically the m var kernel, and it is a bounded linear operator on L2 space. So let's say we have a bivariate functional time series. So my yt is bivariate functional time series. So basically yt is yt1 and yt2. So yt1 is basically will be represented as mu1 plus psi11 depending upon yt minus 1, then psi12 which will be depending upon yt minus 1, 2. And similarly my yt2 will be depending upon both y1 one's previous step as well as y2 of one previous steps. So my psi matrix is basically psi11, psi12, psi21, and psi22. So the functional time series that we observe, we don't generally observe at equal space. It is generally observed at some time which are not equal. So we have take that into account in our model. However, for computational convenience and better interpretability, we have taken the integral operators. That means my psi matrix is basically psi operators are integral operator, as well as we have considered like model to the first order only. Then let's say my small yi's are the observed values of yt sampled with some noise, and this we are going to observe for all the functional time series like 1 to k, and then they will be observed at different points. So my tau I are the observation points of yt, and the nu i's are basically the observation errors that we have. So firstly, we'll try to form a two-level hierarchy model with the help of this, and then we'll move to dynamic linear model. So let's say alpha t is basically my yt minus mu. Then the first equation here is basically the observed equation that we had earlier. Hence, here we are just replacing yt with mu and alpha t for each of this n. And then we have this alpha t, which is depending upon alpha t minus 1. And then we have this integral operator over here and the epsilon t. The other thing to be noticed is like my observation errors, that is my nu I, and my epsilon t, that is my evolution errors, they both are mutually independent. So the dynamic linear model is just an better way to represent the two-level hierarchy model. So firstly, we have this observation equation where my yt is basically depending upon mu and alpha t. And the zt is the incidence matrix. That means it will be 1 at the points which we observation points that we are observing, and it will be 0 otherwise. And then we have alpha t, where it depends upon alpha t minus 1. And then we have this xi q, where So basically where we are approximating the integral of xi with a quadrature method, and my Q is my quadrature weight matrix. So now the observation errors, that is xi nu t, and my observation errors, that is my epsilon t, they both are independent with mean 0 and finite variance. So that's my DLM model. Now we'll see how we can forecast this multivariate functional autoregressive model. So firstly, we'll initialize my mu as a smooth mean of my observed values, and we'll fit a spline to my yt minus mu to estimate my alpha t. And this we are going to do for all of my functional time series. So once we have the estimates of mu and alpha t, we can use that to find the variance covariance matrix of my observed errors and my my kernels, that is my xi. So once we have this xi and alpha t, we can use this evolution equation to find this errors epsilon t, and using this epsilon t and the functional dynamic linear model given by Kowal, we can find the implied covariance matrix, that is K epsilon. And once we have this complete setup of each and everything, we can form my DLM model and use KFARAS package from R to update my alpha t's. Next, we'll see the causal relationship, or we'll see how to examine a causal relationship between two functional time series. So we do have a models for examining the causal relationship for a multivariate time series, but we are trying to extend that thing and implement it into a functional setup. So basically, we'll be using functional autoregressive model for that. So first we'll have an unrestricted model. That means my yt is depending upon yt minus 1 as well as an xt minus 1. And this will account for the grandeur causality. And when my xi x is 0, that means there is no dependence of x on x of xt minus 1 on yt. We can say that there is no grandeur causality effect in there, and this will be my restricted model. So now we'll use a non-parametric method to investigate the effects of grandeur causality. So let my yt plus h as the observed values, where h is some future time period that we are observed, for which we are trying to forecast. Then my y cap is the one-step forecast for the unrestricted model, and y cap star is the one-step forecast for the restricted model. Then we form this F observed statistics, which is defined as here in equation 2. So the numerator is basically the sum of square errors for model 2 minus sum of square errors for model 1 divided by their degrees of freedom, divided, and the denominator is sum of square errors for model 1 divided by their degrees of freedom. And the sum of square errors we have defined as a norm of my observed values minus the one-step forecast for that model. K1, K1 and K2 are the number of parameters in the model. So now we are going to see how we can actually perform the non-parametric test. Here we have used a permutation test to do so. So firstly, we'll compute the F observed statistic for my observed data. Then we'll take a permutation of xt and apply the same procedure to obtain the F observed statistics, and we'll denote it as an FL. So we'll do it for m number of times, and we'll get like F1 to Fm. And then we'll compare it with my F observed statistics, and we'll see how many number of times my this FL statistics is basically less than F observed statistics, and we'll take a mean of that. So basically when this will be denoted as my p-value. So the p-value, if my p-value is less than my level of significance, we can reject the null hypothesis, that is there's no grandeur causality. We can reject that thing, and we can say that the xt is actually grandeur causing yt. So now we'll give a empirical illustration. So we have two yield curves, US and UK, and we have a time period of 4 months, and we have maturities for different time, like 3 months, 6 months, and so on. And then we have a function for each one of them. So in this table, you can clearly see, basically it presents the root mean square forecast error, and we can see the multivariate setup has a lower root mean square errors, and we have a positive F statistics. That means there is a correlation between these two series, and the X series is definitely affecting the Y series. Now we have to see how significant that is, and we'll do that with the help of permutation test. Here we observe a 43% p-value, which is not statistically significant. Thus, we cannot say that UK yield curve is grandeur causing US yield curve. So this is it for this one. We are trying to do a parametric test also. So here are some of the references. Thank you, and do ask your questions, please.